The arrival. The gleaming spires of the Galactic Academy loomed before Jake Thompson as he stepped off the transport shuttle. The 18-year-old human tried to steady his breathing, but the alien atmosphere and lower gravity made him feel slightly dizzy. He clutched his duffel bag tighter, its familiar weight a small comfort in this strange new world. Jake had never imagined he'd end up here, light years away from Earth, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy. 6 months ago, he'd been focused on defending his regional boxing title back in Chicago. Now he was one of the first humans to attend the most prestigious educational institution in known space. As he made his way towards the imposing main building, Jake couldn't help but notice the stares. Aliens of all shapes and sizes paused their conversations to gawk at him. Some looked curious, others wary, and a few downright hostile. Jake kept his head down, trying to ignore the whispers that followed in his wake. Is that a human? What's one of them doing here? Probably won't last a week. Jake gritted his teeth. He'd expected some of this, but the reality was harsher than he'd anticipated. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, only recently discovered by the Arcturian Alliance. Their invitation to send students to the Academy was meant to be a gesture of goodwill, a chance for humanity to prove itself worthy of joining the greater galactic community. As Jake entered the cavernous main hall, a holographic map flickered to life before him. A melodious voice spoke in perfect English. "Welcome, Jake Thompson of Earth. Please proceed to the registration desk." He followed the glowing path on the floor, marveling at the architecture around him. The ceiling seemed to stretch endlessly upward, its surface a simulation of swirling galaxies. Alien students bustled about, their conversations a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and guttural sounds that his universal translator couldn't quite keep up with. At the registration desk, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin greeted him. "Ah, the human," it said, its voice tinged with what Jake thought might be amusement. "We've been expecting you. I am Zara, your orientation guide." Jake nodded, trying to appear confident. "Nice to meet you, Zara. I'm looking forward to starting classes." Zara's large, multifaceted eyes blinked rapidly. "Indeed. Though I must warn you, human Jake, that the Academy can be challenging for species unused to our rigorous standards. Are you certain you're prepared?" Jake felt a flicker of annoyance. He'd faced doubters his whole life. People who thought he was too small for boxing, too poor for college. This was just another hurdle to overcome. "I'm here to learn and do my best," he said firmly. "That's all anyone can ask." Zara made a sound that might have been a chuckle. "Very well. Here is your room assignment and class schedule. Your belongings have already been transported to your quarters. Do try to avoid any incidents. The Academy values peace and cooperation above all else." As Jake turned to leave, he nearly collided with a massive reptilian creature. Its scales were a deep crimson, and multiple arms rippled with muscle beneath its uniform. Jake stumbled back, apology on his lips, but the alien's yellow eyes narrowed dangerously. "Watch where you're going, soft skin," it growled, voice like gravel. "Your kind doesn't belong here." Jake's fists clenched instinctively, but he forced himself to relax. Starting a fight on his first day wouldn't exactly help humanity's image. "Sorry," he muttered, sidestepping the creature. As he walked away, he heard the reptilian alien speaking to its companions. "Did you see that? The human actually apologized. Pathetic. I give it a month before it's crying to go home." Laughter erupted behind him, but Jake kept walking. He'd faced worse odds in the ring. This was just another fight, albeit one with much higher stakes. Jake found his room easily enough, a small but efficient space that would be his home for the next year. As he unpacked, he couldn't shake the feeling of isolation. Back on Earth, he'd been a champion, respected and admired. Here, he was an outsider, a curiosity at best and a target at worst. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. Jake opened it to find a small, avian-like creature with brilliant plumage standing in the hallway. It chittered excitedly, and Jake's translator kicked in. "Oh my, it's true. A real human. I'm Pip, your neighbor. I've never met one of your kind before. Is it true you only have 2 arms? How do you manage?" Jake couldn't help but smile at the alien's enthusiasm. "Nice to meet you, Pip. Yeah, just the 2 arms. But we make it work. I'm Jake." Pip's head tilted curiously. Jake, a strange name. "Tell me, Jake, why have you come to the academy? Surely there are easier paths for a human to take." Jake leaned against the doorframe, considering his answer. Humanity's new to all this. He gestured vaguely at their surroundings. "We've got a lot to prove. I'm here to show that we belong, that we can contribute something valuable to the galaxy." Pip's feathers ruffled in what Jake hoped was approval. A noble goal. Though I must warn you, not everyone here will be as welcoming as I am. The Kruzak, for instance, that's the big red fellow you met earlier. They're not fond of newcomers, especially ones they see as, well, fragile. Jake's jaw tightened. "I'm tougher than I look." Pip's eyes widened. "Oh, I didn't mean to offend. It's just, well, compared to some species here, humans are quite squishy. The Kruzak come from a high-gravity world. Their strength is legendary." "Strength isn't everything," Jake said, thinking of all the opponents he'd faced who'd underestimated him. "There's something to be said for technique and willpower." Pip made a trilling sound that Jake's translator didn't catch. "Well said. I look forward to seeing how you fare, Jake of Earth. The welcoming ceremony is in an hour. Shall we walk together?" Jake nodded, grateful for the friendly face. As they made their way through the winding corridors of the academy, Pip chattered away, pointing out different alien species and explaining bits of academy culture. Jake tried to take it all in, but his mind kept drifting back to the Kruzak's hostility. The welcoming ceremony was held in a massive amphitheater. Thousands of alien students filled the seats, creating a dizzying array of colors, shapes, and sounds. Jake felt acutely aware of his humanity as he sat next to Pip, the only familiar face in a sea of extraterrestrial beings. A holographic image appeared at the center of the amphitheater, coalescing into the form of a being Jake couldn't begin to describe. Its voice, however, resonated clearly through the universal translators. "Welcome, students of the galaxy, to the Galactic Academy. You represent the brightest minds and greatest potential of your respective species. Here, you will learn not only the advanced sciences and arts of our united civilizations, but also the vital importance of cooperation and understanding between all sentient beings." The being's gaze seemed to linger on Jake for a moment before continuing. "This year, we are honored to welcome our first human student. Let this mark a new era of friendship and shared knowledge between humanity and the greater galactic community." A murmur ran through the crowd. Jake felt countless eyes turned towards him, some curious, others skeptical, and a few outright hostile. He sat up straighter, meeting their gazes with determination. He was here to prove himself, to prove humanity's worth. It wouldn't be easy, but then again, nothing worth doing ever was. As the ceremony concluded and the students began to file out, Jake overheard a gruff voice behind him. "Looks like we've got fresh meat this year, boys. Time to show the human what real strength looks like." Jake didn't need to turn around to know it was the Kruzak speaking. He took a deep breath, centering himself the way he did before a big fight. The real test was just beginning, and he was ready to face it head-on. Little did the aliens know, they weren't just dealing with any human. They were about to learn what it meant to challenge a champion. Rising tensions. The first week at the Galactic Academy passed in a blur of new experiences for Jake. Each day brought fresh challenges, from deciphering alien mathematics to navigating the complex social hierarchies of his extraterrestrial peers. Despite the initial hostility, Jake found himself slowly adapting to life among the stars. His friendship with Pip, the enthusiastic avian alien, proved invaluable. Pip's endless curiosity about Earth and human culture gave Jake a welcome respite from the constant feeling of being an outsider. During their shared meals in the Academy's vast dining hall, Pip would pepper Jake with questions about everything from human sports to Earth's ecosystems. "So, in this boxing of yours," Pip chirped one day, his beak clacking excitedly, "you actually intentionally strike each other for sport?" Jake couldn't help but grin. "That's right. It's about skill, strategy, and endurance, not just brute strength." Pip's feathers ruffled in what Jake had come to recognize as a mix of confusion and fascination. Fascinating. Though I must say, it sounds terribly violent. We Everans prefer games of flight and agility. As they conversed, Jake couldn't help but notice the Krozok table across the hall. The reptilian aliens sat huddled together, their massive forms dwarfing the seats beneath them. At their center sat Grax, the Krozok who had confronted Jake on his first day. Grax's yellow eyes seemed to constantly track Jake's movements, narrowing with barely concealed contempt whenever their gazes met. Jake did his best to ignore the Krozok's hostility, focusing instead on his studies and on building relationships with his more open-minded classmates. He found unexpected allies in a group of Arcturians, a species known for their analytical minds and telepathic abilities. They were fascinated by the human capacity for abstract thought and emotional depth, often engaging Jake in long discussions about Earth's philosophies and arts. But despite these positive interactions, the underlying tension with the Krozok continued to simmer. It came to a head during a physical education class focused on adaptive movement in varying gravities. The class gathered in a massive gymnasium, its walls lined with control panels that could alter the room's gravitational field. The instructor, a gelatinous being that seemed to float rather than walk, began the lesson. "Today, we'll be testing your ability to adapt to sudden changes in gravitational force," it burbled. "You'll work in pairs, taking turns to navigate the obstacle course while your partner controls the gravity fluctuations. Remember, the goal is to challenge your partner, not incapacitate them." Jake found himself paired with a lanky, four-armed alien named Zix, who regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "I'll try not to squish you, human," Zix said, mandibles clicking in what Jake hoped was a friendly manner. As Jake prepared to run the course, he couldn't help but notice Grax and his Krozok companions snickering nearby. He pushed the thought from his mind, focusing instead on the task at hand. The obstacle course was a twisting maze of platforms, ropes, and holographic barriers. Jake took a deep breath and began, his muscles tensing as he anticipated the first gravity shift. It came almost immediately, the force doubling and making his limbs feel like lead. Jake gritted his teeth, pushing through the resistance. He had just cleared the first section when the gravity suddenly reversed, sending him floating upwards. Jake's boxing-honed reflexes kicked in, allowing him to twist in midair and grab onto a nearby rope. He used the momentum to swing himself towards the next platform, earning a few impressed murmurs from his classmates. As Jake progressed through the course, he found himself actually enjoying the challenge. The constantly shifting gravity was disorienting, but there was a certain thrill to adapting on the fly. He was nearing the end when he heard a commotion behind him. "Oops," came Grax's mocking voice. "Guess I hit the wrong button." Jake barely had time to register the words before he felt an immense pressure bearing down on him. The gravity had increased tenfold, far beyond the safe limits of the exercise. Jake's knees buckled, and he found himself struggling to breathe as the intense gravitational force pressed down on his chest. Through blurred vision, he saw the instructor rushing towards the control panel, its gelatinous form wobbling in alarm. But the crushing weight was already lessening, replaced by the normal gravity of the room. Jake gasped for air, his body aching from the sudden stress. As he pushed himself to his feet, he found himself face to face with Grax. The Krozok's yellow eyes gleamed with malicious amusement. "Oh my," Grax said, his voice dripping with false concern. Did the little human have trouble with the big bad gravity? Perhaps you're not cut out for galactic life after all. Jake felt a familiar heat rising in his chest, the same fire that fueled him in the boxing ring. Every instinct told him to lash out, to show this arrogant alien exactly what a human was capable of. But he held back, remembering Zora's warning about avoiding incidents. Accidents happen, Jake managed to say, his voice steady despite the anger coursing through him. Maybe next time you'll pay closer attention to which buttons you're pressing. Grax's eyes narrowed, clearly not expecting this level of composure from the human. Before he could respond, the instructor intervened, its voice bubbling with authority. "That will be quite enough," it said. "Grax, report to the disciplinary office immediately. The rest of you, class dismissed." As the other students filed out, many casting curious glances at Jake, Pip rushed over. "By the cosmic winds, Jake, are you all right? I thought you were going to be crushed into a singularity." Jake managed a weak smile. "Takes more than a little extra gravity to keep me down, Pip, though I might be feeling this one tomorrow." As they left the gymnasium, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Kruzok's aggression was escalating, and sooner or later, something would have to give. The next few days saw a marked increase in the Kruzok's bullying tactics. Jake found his belongings mysteriously misplaced, his food tray accidentally knocked over in the dining hall, and his path often blocked by looming reptilian forms in the corridors. Through it all, Jake maintained his composure, refusing to give Grax and his cronies the satisfaction of seeing him rattled. But inside, his frustration was building. He had come to the academy to learn, to prove humanity's worth, not to engage in petty conflicts with alien thugs. It was during a late-night study session in the academy's vast library that things finally came to a head. Jake had been poring over a holographic text on xenobiology, losing track of time as he delved into the fascinating differences between galactic species. As he finally gathered his things to leave, he found his path blocked by Grax and two other Kruzok. Their massive forms cast long shadows in the dim light of the library's night cycle. Well, Grax rumbled, his voice low and menacing. "The human burns the midnight oil. So dedicated to proving yourself, aren't you? It would be admirable if it weren't so pathetic." Jake tensed, his eyes darting around for an escape route. But the Kruzok had him cornered, their bulk effectively trapping him against the towering bookshelves. "I'm not looking for trouble, Grax," Jake said, keeping his voice level. "Just let me pass, and we can all go about our night." Grax let out a harsh laugh, the sound echoing in the empty library. "Oh, but trouble has found you, soft skin. You see, your presence here is an insult. Humans are weak, primitive. You have no place among the stars, no right to stand alongside true galactic citizens." Jake felt his patience finally snap. Weeks of enduring snide comments, physical intimidation, and outright sabotage had taken their toll. He straightened, meeting Grax's gaze with a steely determination that seemed to catch the Kruzok off guard. "You know nothing about humans," Jake said, his voice low and intense. "We may be new to your galactic community, but we've faced challenges you couldn't imagine. We've survived and thrived on a world that tried to kill us at every turn. We've overcome our own divisions to reach for the stars. And now we're here, ready to learn and contribute." Jake took a step forward, causing Grax to blink in surprise. "You think we're weak because our bodies aren't as tough as yours. Strength isn't just about muscle and bone. It's about heart, about the will to keep fighting no matter the odds. That's something humans have in spades." For a moment, silence reigned in the library. Jake could see confusion and a flicker of something else, perhaps respect, in the eyes of Grax's companions. But Grax himself only seemed to grow angrier, his scales flushing a deeper red. "Pretty words," Grax snarled. "But words are all you humans have. You can't back them up with action. You're nothing but talking prey." In a flash, Grax's massive hand shot out, aiming to grab Jake by the throat. But years of boxing training kicked in, and Jake's body reacted on instinct. He ducked under Grax's grip, pivoting to the side with a speed that seemed to surprise the Krozok. "I didn't come here to fight," Jake said, his body instinctively settling into a boxer's stance. "But if that's what it takes to earn some respect, then so be it." Grax roared in frustration, lunging at Jake with all the considerable strength of his species. But Jake was ready. He sidestepped the charge, using Grax's momentum against him to send the massive alien stumbling into a bookshelf. The commotion had attracted attention. Other late-night studiers began to gather, forming a ring around the confrontation. Jake could hear excited whispers, bets being placed on how long the human would last against the mighty Krozok. As Grax recovered and turned to face him again, Jake knew that this was more than just a fight. It was a chance to show everyone watching what humans were truly capable of. It was time to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. The real battle was about to begin, and Jake Thompson, human boxing champion, was ready to show the galaxy what he was made of. The fight. The library had become an impromptu arena, with alien students of various species crowding around to watch the unprecedented spectacle. A human facing off against a Krozok. It was unheard of. Most expected it to be over in seconds, with the fragile human crushed beneath the Krozok's superior strength. But as Grax charged at Jake again, those watching began to realize this wasn't going to be the quick, one-sided fight they had anticipated. Jake's body moved with a fluid grace that seemed to defy the expectations of everyone present. He bobbed and weaved, avoiding Grax's powerful but predictable swings with an ease that was starting to visibly frustrate the Krozok. "Stand still, you slippery worm," Grax roared, his massive fists whistling through the air where Jake had been just moments before. Jake didn't waste breath on a reply. His mind was in that hyper-focused state he knew well from his boxing matches back on Earth. The world had narrowed down to just him and his opponent. Every movement and counter-movement, a complex dance of action and reaction. He could hear the murmurs of the crowd growing louder, the initial amusement at the human's audacity giving way to genuine surprise and excitement. "How is it moving like that? I've never seen anyone dodge a Krozok for this long. Maybe there's more to these humans than we thought." Grax, enraged by his inability to land a solid hit, resorted to using his environment. He grabbed a nearby study table, hefting it over his head with ease. "Let's see you dodge this, soft skin." The table came hurtling towards Jake with frightening speed, but years of training took over. Jake dropped low, the table sailing over his head and splintering against a bookshelf behind him. In the same fluid motion, he surged forward, finally launching his first offensive strike. His fist connected with Grax's midsection, a perfectly placed liver shot that would have dropped most human opponents. Grax grunted, more in surprise than pain, but it was enough to throw him off balance. Jake pressed his advantage, unleashing a flurry of quick jabs to Grax's face. Each punch landed with pinpoint accuracy, targeting the Krozok's more sensitive areas: the eyes, the throat, the joints of his jaw. The crowd gasped. The human was actually landing hits, and not just landing them, but placing them with a precision that spoke of years of training and experience. Grax stumbled back, shaking his head to clear it. When he looked at Jake again, there was a new wariness in his yellow eyes. This was not the easy fight he had expected. You dare to strike me?" Grax snarled, but there was a note of uncertainty in his voice now. Jake settled back into his stance, hands up, light on his feet. "I didn't start this fight, Grax, but I'm going to finish it." With a roar of frustration, Grax charged again. But this time, Jake stood his ground. At the last possible second, he ducked under Grax's swinging arm and delivered a devastating uppercut to the Krozok's jaw. The impact reverberated through the library. Grax's eyes rolled back, his massive form swaying for a moment before crashing to the ground with an earth-shaking thud. Silence fell over the crowd. Every alien student stared in disbelief at the scene before them. The mighty Grax, terror of the academy, laid low by a human half his size. Jake stood over his fallen opponent, chest heaving, fists still raised. He looked around at the stunned faces surrounding him, seeing shock, awe, and the beginnings of respect in their alien features. Pip was the first to break the silence, his excited chirping cutting through the tension. Great cosmic winds. He did it. The human actually did it. As if a spell had been broken, the library erupted into a cacophony of excited chatter. Students pushed forward, eager to get a closer look at the human who had defied all expectations. Jake, still running on adrenaline, barely registered the words of amazement and congratulation being thrown his way. His focus was on Grax, who was starting to stir. The Kradzok pushed himself up, shaking his head groggily. When his eyes finally focused on Jake, there was a mix of emotions in them: anger, confusion, and something that looked suspiciously like respect. Jake extended a hand to his fallen opponent. "It's over, Grax. You fought well." For a long moment, Grax stared at the offered hand. The entire library seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see how the Kradzok would respond. Then, slowly, Grax reached out and clasped Jake's hand, allowing the human to help him to his feet. "I underestimated you, human," Grax rumbled, his voice low enough that only Jake could hear. Perhaps there is more to your species than I thought." Before Jake could respond, the crowd surged forward. He found himself surrounded by excited aliens, all talking at once. Questions flew at him from every direction. How did you move like that? What fighting style was that? Are all humans as strong as you? Jake raised his hands, trying to calm the excited throng. "It's called boxing," he explained, his voice carrying over the din. "It's a human martial art. And no, I'm not particularly strong for a human. It's all about technique, strategy, and willpower." As Jake continued to answer questions, he caught sight of a familiar willowy figure making its way through the crowd. Zara, his orientation guide, regarded him with an unreadable expression. "Mr. Thompson," Zara said, its melodious voice tinged with what might have been amusement, "I believe I advised you to avoid incidents, did I not?" Jake straightened, preparing himself for disciplinary action. "Yes, you did. I'm sorry, but I..." Zara held up a hand, cutting him off. "While fighting is generally discouraged at the academy, we also recognize the importance of cultural exchange. Your display has certainly given your fellow students a new perspective on human capabilities." Jake blinked, surprised by the lack of reprimand. "So, I'm not in trouble." A smile flickered across Zora's iridescent features. "Let's just say that sometimes a practical demonstration is worth more than 1,000 lectures on interspecies cooperation. However, I trust that future disagreements will be settled through more academic means." Jake nodded, relief washing over him. Absolutely. This was a one-time thing. As Zara moved away to disperse the crowd, Jake found himself face to face with Grax once more. The Kradzok seemed to struggle with himself for a moment before speaking. "Thompson," Grax said gruffly, "I apologize for my behavior. It was unworthy of a galactic citizen." Jake nodded, accepting the apology. "Water under the bridge, Grax. Maybe next time we can spar in the gym, under proper conditions." A slow grin spread across Grax's reptilian features. "I would like that. Perhaps you could teach me some of your human boxing techniques." As Jake agreed, he realized that something fundamental had shifted. In standing up for himself, in showcasing human skill and determination, he had done more than just win a fight. He had opened doors, changed perceptions, and taken a significant step towards proving humanity's worth in the galactic community. The incident in the library marked a turning point in Jake's experience at the Galactic Academy. Word of his victory over Grax spread quickly, and suddenly, Jake found himself the center of attention for entirely new reasons. Students who had previously avoided him now sought him out, eager to learn more about human culture and fighting techniques. Even some of the instructors began to show a newfound interest in his perspective during class discussions. As Jake walked through the academy's corridors the next day, he could feel the change in the air. The hostile stares and whispered insults had been replaced by curious glances and respectful nods. He had earned his place here, not just as a representative of humanity, but as an individual worthy of respect. But as Jake basked in this new acceptance, a part of him remained vigilant. He had faced down one challenge, but he knew that in the vast, complex world of galactic politics and interspecies relations, there would be many more to come. The fight in the library was just the beginning of his journey to prove humanity's worth among the stars. Aftermath and alliances. The days following Jake's confrontation with Grax brought a whirlwind of changes. As he entered the Academy's Grand Lecture Hall for his xenobiology class, Jake couldn't help but notice the shift in atmosphere. Where once he had been met with cold stares or indifference, now he found himself the center of curious attention. As he took his seat, a tall crystalline being that Jake recognized as a Quatarian leaned towards him. "Is it true," the alien whispered, its voice a melodious chime, "that humans train in combat from infancy?" Jake chuckled, shaking his head. "Not exactly. Boxing is just one of many sports on Earth. Most humans never throw a punch in their lives." The Quatarian's facets shimmered with interest. "Fascinating. Your species continues to confound our expectations." Before Jake could respond, Professor Xylith, a venerable Arcturian known for his groundbreaking work in comparative physiology, called the class to order. As the lesson began, Jake found himself called upon more frequently than ever before, his human perspective suddenly valued in discussions of galactic biodiversity. After class, as Jake gathered his materials, he felt a presence beside him. He turned to find Grax, the Krudzok's imposing form, drawing surprised looks from nearby students. "Thompson," Grax rumbled, his voice low. "A word, if you please." Jake nodded, following Grax to a quiet corner of the hall. The Krudzok seemed to struggle with his words for a moment before speaking. "I've been reflecting on our encounter," Grax said, his yellow eyes meeting Jake's gaze. "Your skill was impressive, but more than that, your words about human resilience, they've given me much to consider." Jake listened, surprised by the Krudzok's candor. Grax continued, "I've spoken with my broodmates. We believe there may be value in learning more about human combat techniques. Would you be willing to instruct us?" Jake blinked, taken aback by the request. "You want me to teach you boxing?" Grax nodded solemnly. "The adaptability you displayed, the precision of your strikes, these are skills that could benefit even Krudzok warriors. In exchange, we could offer instruction in our own martial traditions." A slow smile spread across Jake's face. This was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. A chance not just to share human culture, but to learn from one of the galaxy's most formidable warrior races. "I'd be honored, Grax. When do we start?" As they worked out the details, Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He had come to the academy hoping to prove humanity's worth, and now he was being asked to share human knowledge with one of the galaxy's most respected species. However, not everyone at the academy was pleased with Jake's rising prominence. As he made his way to the dining hall later that day, he overheard a heated conversation around the corner. "This is unacceptable," a voice hissed, its tone dripping with disdain. "The human is disrupting the natural order. If it continues to gain influence, our plans could be jeopardized." Another voice, smoother and more controlled, responded, "Patience, Zyrex. The human's little display of prowess changes nothing in the grand scheme. We will proceed as planned." Jake froze, his mind racing. What plans? Who were these beings, and why did they see him as a threat? Before he could hear more, the voices faded, their owners moving away. Jake stood there for a moment, a chill running down his spine. He had been so focused on proving himself, on overcoming the obvious challenges, that he had forgotten a crucial fact. In a place like the Galactic Academy, not all dangers were as straightforward as Grax's bullying. Lost in thought, Jake almost bumped into Pip as he entered the dining hall. The avian alien's feathers were ruffled with excitement. "Jake, there you are," Pip chirped. "Have you heard the news? The Academy is organizing an interspecies combat tournament. It's all anyone's talking about." Jake's eyebrows shot up. "A combat tournament? That's unexpected." Pip nodded enthusiastically. "It's meant to foster understanding between species through controlled, ritualized combat. And after your display in the library, well, many are hoping you'll participate." As Pip continued to chatter about the tournament, Jake's mind whirled with possibilities. A tournament could be the perfect opportunity to showcase human abilities on a larger stage. But it could also put an even bigger target on his back. His thoughts drifted back to the conversation he had overheard. Were these mysterious plans somehow connected to the tournament? And if so, what did it mean for him and for humanity's place in the galactic community? As Jake mulled over these questions, he was approached by Zora, the willowy orientation guide. Her iridescent skin seemed to shimmer with an inner light as she addressed him. "Jake Thompson," Zora said, her melodious voice tinged with an emotion Jake couldn't quite place. "The Academy Board requests your presence. It seems your recent activities have caught their attention." Jake swallowed hard, nodding. As he followed Zora through the winding corridors of the Academy, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something much bigger than a simple disciplinary meeting. The board's chamber was a vast, circular room, its walls lined with holographic displays showing distant star systems and swirling galaxies. At its center stood a semicircular table, behind which sat the most diverse collection of beings Jake had ever seen. There was an Arcturian, its tentacled head pulsing gently; a Quatarian, its crystalline body refracting the room's light in mesmerizing patterns; a being that seemed to be made entirely of swirling gas; and several other species Jake couldn't even begin to identify. At the center sat a humanoid figure with skin the color of burnished gold and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of millennia. This, Jake realized with a start, must be the legendary Headmaster Zorn, rumored to be one of the oldest and wisest beings in the known galaxy. "Jake Thompson of Earth," Headmaster Zorn spoke, his voice resonating with a power that belied his fragile appearance. "You stand before us at a pivotal moment in galactic history. Your actions have stirred things." Jake stood straight, trying to project confidence he didn't entirely feel. "Headmaster, honored board members, I hope I haven't caused any trouble. I only sought to—" Zorn raised a hand, silencing him. "You sought to prove your worth, and in doing so, you have inadvertently set greater events in motion. The combat tournament that has been announced, it was not our idea." Jake blinked in surprise. "It wasn't. But I thought." "It was suggested," the Arcturian interjected, its voice a series of melodic clicks that Jake's translator rendered into words, "by a coalition of species who see your success as problematic. They wish to prove, once and for all, that humanity is unfit for true galactic citizenship." The gaseous being added, its voice a whispering hiss. "They believe that in open combat against the galaxy's greatest warriors, your species' weaknesses will be laid bare for all to see." Jake's mind raced, connecting the dots. The overheard conversation, the sudden announcement of the tournament. It all made sense now. So this tournament is a trap, a way to humiliate humanity. Headmaster Zorn nodded gravely. "That is their intent. But intent and outcome are not always aligned. Jake Thompson, we believe you have the potential to turn this challenge into an opportunity, to showcase not just human physical capabilities, but the adaptability, creativity, and indomitable spirit that truly define your species." Jake stood there, the weight of expectation heavy on his shoulders. He had come to the Academy to prove humanity's worth, but he never imagined the stakes would be this high. "What do you need me to do?" he asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. The board members exchanged glances before Headmaster Zorn spoke again. Participate in the tournament. Show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of. But be warned, the challenges you will face will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine. You will need allies, training, and every ounce of human ingenuity you possess. As Jake nodded his acceptance, he couldn't help but feel a mix of fear and exhilaration. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but it was also an unprecedented opportunity. Win or lose, he would show the galaxy the true spirit of humanity. As he left the board chamber, his mind already racing with plans for training and preparation, Jake knew one thing for certain. The real challenge was only just beginning. The tournament. The weeks leading up to the interspecies combat tournament flew by in a blur of intense preparation. Jake's days became a grueling cycle of physical training, strategic planning, and studying the combat styles of various alien species. His unlikely alliance with Grax and the other Krazak proved invaluable. They trained together daily, exchanging techniques and pushing each other to new limits. Jake's boxing skills improved dramatically as he adapted them to counter the Krazak's incredible strength and durability. Pip, ever the loyal friend, took it upon himself to become Jake's research assistant, tirelessly gathering information on potential opponents and their weaknesses. Did you know the Zorblaxians have a hidden sensory organ behind their third eye? Pip would chirp excitedly, his feathers ruffling with each new discovery. Even some of the professors, intrigued by Jake's determination, offered guidance. Professor Xylith provided insights into the physiological weaknesses of various species, while a Quatarian instructor named Lyra taught Jake meditation techniques to enhance his focus and reaction time. As the day of the tournament dawned, the entire academy buzzed with anticipation. The event was to be broadcast across the galaxy, with representatives from dozens of worlds in attendance. For Jake, the pressure was immense. He knew that he wasn't just fighting for himself, but for humanity's place among the stars. The tournament arena was a massive, circular platform suspended in a zero-gravity field. Holographic barriers could be activated to simulate various environments, adding an element of unpredictability to each match. Jake's first opponent was a Volcrin, a being composed of living stone. Its movements were slow but devastatingly powerful. Jake danced around it, using his superior speed and agility to wear it down before landing a series of precision strikes to its few vulnerable points. As Jake progressed through the rounds, he faced challenges that tested him to his limits. A gelatinous blobian that could absorb and redirect energy, a phantasm that could turn intangible at will, a cybernic with enhanced reflexes and built-in weaponry. With each victory, Jake could feel the shift in the audience's perception. What had started as skepticism and even mockery turned to grudging respect and then outright admiration. Humans, it seemed, were full of surprises. But it wasn't just Jake's physical skills that impressed. It was his adaptability, his quick thinking, and his unwavering determination. When faced with a telepathic opponent who could predict his moves, Jake randomized his fighting style, relying on pure instinct. Against a creature that fed on negative emotions, he maintained an unbreakable focus, turning the match into a battle of attrition. As Jake prepared for the final round, he found himself facing an opponent he hadn't expected, Grax. The Krazak warrior approached Jake in the preparation area, his yellow eyes gleaming with a mix of respect and anticipation. "It seems our paths cross again, Thompson," Grax rumbled. Jake nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "So they do. May the best fighter win." Grax's scaled lips pulled back in what Jake had learned was a Krazak grin. "Indeed. But remember, regardless of the outcome, you have already won a greater victory. You have earned the respect of the Krazak, and that is no small feat." As they stepped into the arena for the final match, the crowd's roar was deafening. The holographic barriers shimmered to life, transforming the platform into a rocky, unstable terrain. a nod to both Earth's varied landscapes and the Krozok homeworld. The fight that followed would be talked about for years to come. Jake and Grax moved like dancers in a deadly ballet, each anticipating the other's moves, trading blows that would have felled lesser opponents. Jake's lightning-fast jabs and footwork contrasted with Grax's earth-shattering power strikes. As the match wore on, Jake could feel his strength flagging. Grax's superior endurance was beginning to tell. But then, Jake remembered something Professor Xylith had told him about Krozok physiology. Their remarkable stamina came at a cost. They had poor heat regulation. With a burst of inspiration, Jake changed tactics. He began to move more, forcing Grax to chase him across the unstable terrain. Each time Grax launched an attack, Jake would redirect it, using the Krozok's own strength against him. Slowly but surely, Grax's movements began to slow. His scales, usually a deep crimson, had taken on a paler hue. He was overheating. In the final moments of the match, as Grax launched a desperate charge, Jake sidestepped and used the Krozok's momentum to flip him onto his back. Before Grax could recover, Jake had him pinned in a submission hold. For a breathless moment, the arena was silent. Then, Grax tapped out. The crowd erupted. Jake had done it. He had won the tournament. As Jake helped Grax to his feet, he was swarmed by well-wishers. Pip's excited chirping could be heard above the din, and even the normally stoic Professor Xylith was beaming with pride. In the days that followed, the implications of Jake's victory reverberated throughout the galaxy. Humanity, once dismissed as a primitive species barely worth notice, was now seen in a new light. Jake's combination of physical skill, quick thinking, and indomitable spirit had showcased the best of what humans had to offer. At a grand ceremony to close the academic year, Headmaster Zorn addressed the assembled students and dignitaries. The events of this year have taught us all a valuable lesson. The ancient being intoned, his golden skin gleaming in the light. We must never judge a species by our preconceptions. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders, and every being, every culture, has something unique to offer. Turning to Jake, Zorn continued, "Jake Thompson, you came to us to prove humanity's worth. You have done that and more. You have reminded us all of the values that the Galactic Academy stands for: curiosity, perseverance, and the endless capacity for growth." As Jake stood there, accepting the thunderous applause, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment. He had faced seemingly insurmountable odds and emerged victorious. But more than that, he had opened doors for his entire species. Later, as Jake packed his belongings for the journey home, he reflected on how much had changed. He had come to the academy as an outsider, viewed with suspicion and disdain. He was leaving as a respected member of the galactic community, with friends from a dozen different worlds and knowledge that few humans had ever possessed. Pip, helping Jake with his packing, chirped excitedly about plans to visit Earth. Grax and his Krozok broodmates were discussing a cultural exchange program. Even the mysterious beings who had once seen Jake as a threat had fallen silent, their plans thwarted by the very spectacle they had orchestrated. As Jake boarded the transport that would take him back to Earth, he knew that his journey was far from over. He had been changed by his experiences at the academy, and now he had the opportunity and the responsibility to help change humanity's place in the galaxy. The stars stretched out before him, no longer distant and unreachable, but full of promise and possibility. Jake Thompson, human boxing champion turned galactic diplomat, was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. As the transport ship accelerated away from the academy, Jake couldn't help but smile. He had come seeking to prove humanity's worth, and in doing so, he had discovered the true strength of his species, not just in body, but in heart and mind. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would he. The end of his time at the Galactic Academy was just the beginning of a new chapter, for Jake, for humanity, and for the entire galactic community. The future, vast and unknown, awaited.